well, let's get started here. I know this is going to be an action-packed webcast, and we want to make sure we take everyone's time into account. So, greetings, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. The Build Fellowship, we're here today to talk about transitioning from F1 OPT into H-1B, how to prepare for this upcoming H-1B lottery, and what are some options in case the lottery isn't as fortuitous as you would hope. My name's Ian. I am the Director of Partnerships here at the Build Fellowship. I have been working in international ed, global mobility, immigration now for almost 20 years. I work with all of our fellows and their employers and their attorneys and make the magic happen. And I'm really, really happy to be joined by my colleague, Jeff Goldman. Jeff, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Ian. I'm Jeff Goldman. I'm an immigration lawyer in Boston. I've been practicing immigration law for 31 years, and I'm the co-founder of the Build Fellowship, which I really look forward to Ian introducing to you if you don't know who we are. And the bulk of what I do is H-1Bs every day, advising both individuals and companies on best strategies, best options, and that's my work life every day.
Excellent. Well, we're happy to have you here, Jeff. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with me and laugh at all of my dumb jokes and hopefully give our audience some good information about their future and immigration. So here's our agenda, what we're going to be covering today. We're going to start just by talking a little bit about the basics of H-1B, what the visa is all about. We'll talk a little bit about the timeline and the lottery, how employers prepare for the lottery, and if the lottery doesn't end up working out, what are some of the alternatives to the lottery? We'll talk about, USCIS processing and petitioning, cap-exempt timeline, speaking a little bit about the fellowship. And then at the end, we'll wrap up with a little bit of just kind of updates with what's going on in the world of immigration right now, some current events, and if we have time, some Q&A. So let's start with the basics, right? Many of you here are either international students, maybe you're on your F1 about to transition to OPT, or you are on your OPT or STEM OPT extension, or you're an employer, right? Looking to maybe hire an international or foreign national to work at your firm. So here are some basics on what you need to have to qualify for an H-1B. And just so everyone understands, the H-1B visa, the work visa, is the most common and sought after work visa here in the United States. Okay. You've probably heard about it in the news. If you're a foreign national, you know all exactly what it is. But if you're not, you've probably heard about it in the news a lot lately. And so it's for highly skilled foreign nationals to live and work in the United States. And to be qualified for one, you need to meet these requirements. So you need to have at least a bachelor's, master's, or PhD in a STEM or business related field. Okay. Along with that, you need to have a job offer from a U.S. employer, potentially even your own organization if you are a founder of an entity. And the position has to be related to your field. Okay. That's really, really important. You can't have a degree in, mechanical engineering and get an H-1B to be a bartender. It doesn't work that way. Right. And so it has to be in a field in which you are qualified for, and it has to qualify as a specialty occupation field. Okay. And then along with that, you need to have at least 2 years of relevant work experience. And so for those of you here today that are on maybe a STEM OPT, the 2 years that you've been working for your current employer on that STEM OPT, that does count towards that 2 years of relevant work experience. Okay. Jeff, did I miss anything there?
No, but I think one important correction I just want to make. The H-1B does not require you to have 2+ years of work experience. That's the Build
That's
Fellowship's
right.
rule. And so I just want to point out, you could be graduating this coming May with a bachelor's, and you are eligible for the H-1B lottery. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you enter the lottery even before you have that bachelor's degree.
Sure.
We'll be talking about that.
Sure. Thanks for the clarification, Jeff. Yes. And so for those of you who are familiar with the H-1B lottery or not, it's we'll dive into it here in a minute, but it accounts for 85,000 total visas annually, right? That's it. It's called a capped H-1B because it's capped at 85,000. Okay. And so every year, if you are put into the lottery and you win, you're one of 85,000 individuals who will get this capped H-1B for the year. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what this timeline first kind of looks like, and then we'll dive into like what the process of the H-1B lottery is. It's pretty much a year-long process, right? Starting in October through the end of the year, so right around now, employers are kind of preparing for their next year, right? Of staffing, making sure they understand the types of job roles that they will need, and the type of candidates they're going to be working with, right? Preparing certain documents for the coming year, right? We just kind of are wrapping up budget season as well. Then in the beginning of the year, around March, is when we have the H-1B registration, and then eventually the lottery. This is where the organization will go online and file the registration, pay the registration fees, and then you await for the lottery results, right? The lottery results typically are posted by around April 1st, right? Sometimes maybe the March 31st, but it's usually right around then. That's when USCIS does the lottery and they notify the employers of whether or not they've won, right? Then fast forward to April through June. This is when employers are going to be going through the process of filing the petition, because even though you win the lottery, there's still work to be done, right? We still have to file the petition. USCIS has to review it. That's where Form I-120 will be filed along with the labor condition application and additional supporting documents. It's a lot what Jeff and his firm does through this time of year, right? Then USCIS, they collect all of that information, they review it, right? They want to make sure everything adds up and people are who they say they are, and all their credentials are real, and go through the process of evaluating and adjudicating the petition, right? Everything gets approved, looking good. That H-1B then becomes active on October 1st of the year that you win the lottery. And it's a little confusing sometimes because in March of this next year, it'll be March 2026, it'll be called the fiscal year 2027 lottery. So it's about a year ahead when you're reading about it. It confused me at first when I first was exposed to it, but now it kind of makes sense. And then you both start your employment on your H-1B. We can talk a little bit about the difference between consular notify processing or change of status processing. But if you're here in the United States right now on a F1 or a STEM or a regular OPT, you'll be going through change of status processing. Okay. Did I miss anything on this timeline, Jeff?
No,
Okay.
all correct.
Good. It's kind of like I'm performing in front of my professor, right? Making sure I touch all the right things, right? So let's talk about the journey here. So as I mentioned, around this time of year, employers are starting to kind of prepare for the upcoming year. I spend all day, every day, outside of hosting these amazing webcasts, talking with companies and kind of getting in preparation for this upcoming lottery to position themselves with employees that they want to retain if the lottery results aren't what they want to be, right? And so a lot of companies are preparing right now. So for you, those of you at home that are either coming out of university and graduating in the spring or are on your OPT, first step is you got to have an employer, right? And so I know that's for most of us one of the most difficult hurdles to overcome, right? But you got to find an employer first, right? And so along with that, you'll work with an organization to prepare for the lottery. And I know coming out of school, it can be kind of intimidating because the first goal for everyone is get a job, right? Start making some money. But you also, as a foreign national, when you're coming out on your OPT, you kind of also want to start thinking a little bit further down the line on, okay, not only do I need a job, I also would like the employer to want to put me in the H-1B lottery so they can retain me later on, right? You don't want to necessarily like decline a job because they're not going to do that, but it's important to kind of ask these questions right away because unfortunately, I've had conversations with individuals who are in their third year of OPT, their company never put them in the lottery, right? And they're just now looking for options. And so start that process as early as you can, right? Um, so Jeff, if I am coming out of OPT or coming out of school and I don't have a job offer yet, but I want to kind of prepare for this coming lottery, is there anything that I can do like as
Well,
an
first,
individual without an employer?
yeah, as you said, Ian, you need to do everything you can do to find an employer who would consider sponsoring an H-1B. Over the past 2 years, lots and lots of websites are out there that list H-1B friendly employers.
That's right.
On myvisa.com, Reddit, Deal, DEEL, lots of places are listing employers who will sponsor an H-1B. Hopefully before you take a job on OPT or STEM OPT, you already know that they will sponsor you. And it's an important question to ask. It's a fair question to ask an employer because you need to know if they're not sponsoring anybody for H-1B, that's not the place to spend your time on OPT or STEM OPT. Another critical thing to understand is that if at the end of the day you still haven't found a job or an employer who will sponsor you, it is possible to sponsor yourself. Um, Last year, USCIS, that's the U.S. Immigration Service, made it abundantly clear that they now will permit any U.S. company to sponsor an H-1B for the founder of the company or for anyone who owns equity in the company. They no longer require there be a valid employer-employee relationship. The only downside is that these entrepreneurship-sponsored H-1Bs will be valid for only 18 months if you win the lottery and it's approved, as opposed to the 36 months. So if you're really in trouble, you could start your own company. You cannot enter the lottery without a company and an employer identification number. But that's all you need. And maybe one more thing. It would be a waste of your time and money if you quickly start a company, enter the lottery, win the lottery, but then when you go to file the H-1B petition, your company really isn't doing anything yet. And there's no money in the company to pay the fair wage for the job. These would That would be terrible because
Right.
your H-1B will most likely be denied if you really can't articulate exactly what the company is doing, what you're doing, and why what you're doing requires that specialized degree you have. As Ian said earlier, that's the essence of H-1B, and how the company is going to be able to pay you the fair wage. So these are things you need to think about. But if you feel you could meet those burdens, it is definitely possible that you could start your own company and enter yourself into the lottery.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. I did put in the chat for those of you interested a couple of websites. I didn't link to every like the hyperlinks or the URLs, but a couple of the sites that Jeff was mentioning that list H-1B friendly employers. So I'd take a look at that. So let's talk a little bit about the timing of the lottery, right? So the lottery results are typically posted around April 1st. When does the actual entering of the lottery process start, Jeff?
It's a two-step process, both of which must be completed only by the employer. The foreign national cannot directly enter the lottery. It must be the employer. If you own the company, fine, then your company can enter you.
Sure.
It's a two-step process. In mid-February, usually, USCIS, that's the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, makes a public announcement that the registration to get into the portal, the USCIS portal, will be open. And it usually opens in mid-February. That's just to enter data about the company so that you can be hooked up to their portal. And then they will announce what date in March that the lottery will be open, where the employer can go into the portal and then enter the foreign national's name, his or her passport number, the degree they have, whether it's a bachelor's, master's, or PhD, and very little other information. Um, it's incredibly easy to do. One does not need a lawyer to enter the H-1B lottery. Yet, at the same time, hundreds of companies hire me every year, and thousands hire other attorneys every year to do it because it can be a little bit, it's not really time consuming, but maybe a little bit daunting.
Or
Um,
intimidating, right? You want to get it
Intimidating,
right.
or basically they don't want it, companies don't want to deal with it. They just want the lawyer to do it. So
Sure.
that's how lawyers do get involved. But I like to tell people this is not that complicated. You could enter the lottery by yourself. Caveat, if you win the lottery and your company then must file the H-1B petition by June 30th, you must hire a
And
lawyer
that's
to
the
do
next
that.
slide, Jeff. So we'll talk all
Okay.
about that. Um,
Okay.
so you've been an immigration attorney now for, I mean, by the looks of things, probably only like 10 years, but you said about 30 years, right?
Yeah,
Tell us the truth. Is the lottery really random?
I believe so.
You think so?
I
There's
do
no
believe
like
so.
secret, David Stern freezing the envelope so the Knicks get Patrick Ewing or anything like that. Like it's totally random, huh?
I've often thought that that's how the Knicks got Patrick Ewing.
Yeah,
Um, but I do believe it's random. We have companies all over the place with offering all sorts of positions at all different wages who win. We have strong applicants that are absolutely in the national interest of the United States that lose. We have companies owned by donors, big donors, to the current sitting president over the years. They lose. So I really believe that the H-1B lottery is random. One thing we haven't said yet, yes, 85,000 win, but hundreds and hundreds of thousands enter.
that's right.
For many years, it was at least 400, 500, 600,000. It's been reduced a little bit last year. I think it was in the high 300,000s that entered. And this year, because of President Trump's new rule that there is a $100,000 fee attached to an application if the foreign national is outside the US. This is basically going to shut down hundreds of thousands of applications that normally come in from what I call Indian job shop companies, large Indian companies who are applying for hundreds of thousands of H-1Bs for Indian software engineers who will come work for the job shop in the US and then be farmed out to whichever big tech company will pay the fair
The
wage.
consultant, right? Yeah.
Yeah, as consultants. So this could shut down the $100,000 fee may end up shutting down this completely. So there could be many, many more lottery winners this year than before. It all remains to be seen.
And that kind of
There's a
leads to the question on here as well is like, can you enter the lottery multiple times to improve your chances? And from what I understand, one company can't put your name in multiple times, but multiple companies can apply for the one person.
This is all true. However, it no longer increases your chance of winning
Okay.
because last year, USCIS did something very smart. They started picking lottery winners by passport number, and you only have one passport number.
I
And
see.
as soon as your passport number is selected, even if there's 10 other H-1B employers out there who have entered the lottery for you, all other entries are immediately void.
Okay.
So having 10 different companies file for you does not increase your chance of winning.
Good to know. All right. So let's talk about what happens kind of after the lottery results are posted. You mentioned, all right, we've got to actually file this petition. This is when really need the immigration attorney to come in June 6th, right? Um, how long does this process typically take from, okay, I've been notified that I've won the lottery to my company is going to file this petition for me?
It literally cannot be done faster than 10 days because the first step in processing an H-1B petition is to get an approval from the U.S. Department of Labor of the LCA application. That is the document that the employer signs and submits electronically to the Department of Labor, where the employer promises to pay the fair wage. The employer promises they are not laying off U.S. workers in order to employ this person. And really not possible to get an approval from the Department of Labor faster than 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days. So that has to be approved first.
Okay.
What we like to do at my law firm is be preparing the H-1B petition during that 6 to 10 day period so that everything is ready to go as soon as the LCA is approved.
Right. Okay.
However, I mean, last year, out of the 380 applications, lottery registrations we submitted, we we had over 140 winners. And while we're strong, we have a large team, we could not prepare 140 applications within a week. So things were spread out. Hopefully, your lawyer will be filing in either April or May. The deadline is June 30th. Um, Interesting, important fact. Because the deadline is June 30th, you have if you don't need to meet all the requirements for H-1B until you file, and you can file as late as June 30th. So, for example, in March, when you're having an employer register you for the lottery, you might not have a bachelor's degree yet.
That's right. You
You
haven't
can still
graduated
be
yet.
entered into the lottery because if you win the lottery, your employer just needs to wait till after your graduation in May or June to file the H-1B petition.
Understood.
And so that's a very important fact. Do not wait until June. It's a mess. Things happen, you're waiting, and suddenly you think you're ready to
If you
go and
can't
start
avoid it, don't wait until June. Right.
if you
Yeah.
can't avoid it.
Yeah.
If you can't avoid it. Because something might go wrong with the filing. And it might take you days to know, oh my God, the filing was rejected. You can't, you need time to correct it. But if you sometimes you find out in July your H-1B was rejected. Maybe you had the wrong filing fee. Maybe you had your 10-page petition was missing a page. It's too late. It'll be denied, rejected, and you're out. They will not give you another chance to fix it if it's already July.
Understood. Okay. So, along with the timing, then, because a lot of the people here today maybe are on OPT, maybe they're in F1, right? A lot of OPTs expire around May through June, right? And so, can you explain exactly what a cap gap is?
Help protect those people who have OPT or STEM OPT that is expiring before October 1st. The U.S. Immigration Service announced the cap gap rule, where they automatically extend your OPT from an expiration date. So, but this is only for people whose OPT is expiring after April 1st.
Okay.
If that's true, then you file the H-1B petition before June 30th, and your OPT will automatically be extended from the ending date you were given for 9 months.
Okay.
Now, it used to only be extended till October 1st because that would be the day you could start an H-1B. But over the past few years, it became very clear USCIS cannot possibly
Process
process and
everything.
adjudicate all of these applications by October 1st.
Right.
So to help people out, your cap gap automatic extension of OPT is now valid for 9 months until the spring of the following year.
Excellent. So that way, if you, let's say your OPT expires July 1st, you win the lottery, you file the petition, it's approved, you have that time, in case things get delayed or whatever it may be.
Yes,
So you don't have to leave the country and then come back in or anything like that.
correct.
Excellent.
Correct.
Okay. So This is a question that we get all the time, and this is where we're going to start talking about some of the options here. What happens if I got an employer, they put me in the lottery, and I don't win, right? So I think it's important to know that if you have a degree in a STEM field and you qualify for the STEM extension of your OPT, you have potentially 3 lottery attempts, right?
Right.
And so if you don't win the first year, it's not the end of the world. You can still work for, for another 2 years and have 2 more attempts, right? So what we're going to talk about here of what are the alternatives if I don't win? This is more for those who don't have any attempts left, right? You get the results on April 1st. My OPT expires July 7th. What can I do now, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about cap-exempt H-1Bs and what the Build Fellowship does with that. There are some other alternatives, though, as well, as you can see here on the screen. O-1 visas, this is, extraordinary ability visa, right? We'll talk a little bit about that. The L-1 visa is if you're working for an employer that has an international office, they transfer you abroad for a year. Working in an international office, they can bring you back in a year later on an L-1 visa. Maybe some of you here have gone through that process. The employment-based national interest waiver, that's a whole process, but that also does take, significant amount of time. Probably the most common backup plan for a lot of people is a day one CPT program. This is where you re-enroll in a university. It's an F1 visa again. It's a CPT program that allows you to continue to work while also going back to school. There's risks with that as well. It's a non-immigrant intent visa. It can kind of look kind of flimsy when you are starting the employment-based green card process. But there are some other alternatives out there. If you don't want to have to go back to school and you want to be able to work on an H-1B and you want to have all the benefits of an H-1B, like dual intent to start your green card process, multi-entry visa to travel, things like that, this is where the cap-exempt H-1B visa is going to come in as a great option. So we're going to talk a little bit about how it works, how the timeline kind of differs from the standard H-1B through the lottery, and how this works with employers as a backup plan. Okay. So first and foremost, based on my understanding, the lottery was created in 1998, right? That's when they made the H-1B lottery. 2 years later, Congress came back and they said, hey, look, there's other types of organizations that should be able to get these H-1B visas that are not subject to the lottery. I'll show you on the next slide. I'll show you what those entities are, but we're going to designate these entities as cap-exempt, right? So what does this mean? That means that these types of organizations can file these H-1B cap-exempt visas at any time during the year. They're not subject to the annual H-1B lottery. And they're not limited to, the visa itself doesn't count towards that 85,000 total number in the lottery. So if you think about it like this, 85,000 capped, that's the lottery, uncapped, as many as can be filed and approved, right? So one of the big benefits of the cap-exempt H-1B is it can be filed at any time during the year outside of the annual lottery cycle, right? And the process is relatively brief, all things considered, when you're talking about an immigration process, right? And it's also important to know the cap-exempt H-1B has the same benefits as a cap subject H-1B. So as I mentioned, it's valid for 3 years. And this is obviously if you're through an employer, not through an entrepreneurial designation. Valid for 3 years. It can be extended for an additional 3 years, so 6 years total. You can file an H-4 petition for any of your dependents. It's multi-entry, so you can travel, right? And it's dual intent, and so you can start the green card process, right? Because one of the big downsides of an F-1 visa, it's non-immigrant intent, right? And so it makes that process difficult, okay? So what types of companies, what types of entities are considered cap exempt, right? So there's 4 main types. Number one, and the biggest, hands down, that files the most cap exempt H-1Bs, employs the most cap exempt foreign nationals, public universities in the United States, right? So if you go to a state college in the US, they're cap exempt, okay? From there, we have government research organizations, nonprofit research organizations, and then nonprofits that are affiliated and partnered with a university. Okay. So we are going to be talking about the Build Fellowship. So when you're wondering, okay, how does the Build Fellowship have cap exempt status? We are the fourth designation here. We are the nonprofit that is partnered or affiliated with universities. Okay. So how this works, and it's a really interesting process, is that if you are an employee of a cap exempt organization for as little as 5 hours per week, you can then have a cap subject employer file something that's called a concurrent petition. And that concurrent petition is what allows this cap subject for-profit company to employ you on this cap exempt visa. So essentially the idea is that the cap exempt H-1B visa can have multiple employers with just the one visa, so long as each additional employers files one of these concurrent petitions. Okay. So we'll talk about how this model works in relation to the Build Fellowship. Okay. So Build Fellows, we work with highly skilled foreign nationals and we create with them an experiential learning project that is based on their specific area of expertise. So you've all gone to university, you're all coming out with a degree, you have a specific field, right, that you're working in. Most of you probably are STEM related, some might be in like finance, business, something along those lines. So we develop a project with you that represents the work that you do within your field, okay? This project is then offered to our university partners for their students to apply to and participate in as a way for these students to gain some practical knowledge in a field and industry that they eventually are going to work in. So if you have a degree in mechanical engineering, you're working as a mechanical engineer, we build a project with you that kind of represents what's it like to work as a mechanical engineer, the work that you're doing. And then these students from our university partners apply, they're all studying to be mechanical engineers as well, right? And so they're getting this practical experience. Many of our university partners allow participation in this project to satisfy their internship requirement for the major. Some of our university partners even provide academic credit to the students for participating in these projects. So it's really, really beneficial for these students because they're learning from someone in their field that's just a few years ahead of them, right? So it's really great experience for them to be able to enter the job force or the job field and have an understanding of what it's like to work in that industry. So we build a project with you. You're working with university students for 5 hours each week, right? Leading this project. By working those 5 hours per week for one of the nonprofits of the Build Fellowship, you qualify for this cap-exempt H-1B visa, right? Once you have the cap-exempt visa through the fellowship, you're a full-time employer, as I mentioned, can be for-profit, cap subject, can file this concurrent petition. And once that concurrent petition is filed, you can then work for that organization as well. Okay, so one visa, two employers. Okay.
Ian, can we go back for 1 second?
Yeah, of course.
Critical to this concept working is that you must remain employed by
Yes.
the cap exempt organization.
That's right.
Or else the for-profit company that was able to access a H-1B for you without winning the lottery, they will lose that
Thank you for
privilege.
making that point, Jeff. Yes. So we get this question all the time. Okay, so do the fellowship. I get my H-1B approved for the fellowship. My primary employer files a concurrent petition. Oh, I can leave the fellowship then, right? No. You stay in the fellowship because the employment through the nonprofit of the fellowship is what qualifies you for that visa, right? Eventually, we'll talk about kind of like next steps. Next year, your company puts you in the H-1B lottery. You win, you leave the fellowship. You get your O visa approved, you leave the fellowship. You get your EAD card through the green card process, great, you leave the fellowship, right? There's all these different pathways that you can go. But until you have another solution, you have to maintain your work in your fellowship in order to maintain that H-1B visa. So thanks for bringing that up, Jeff.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about timeline, because this is honestly a lot of you here today. If your OPT is going to be expiring relatively soon after the lottery, you're probably like, do I have time to do this, right? I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to have to leave the US. What am I looking at in terms of timeline? Okay. So The entire process, for those of you who are in the United States and we're looking at doing what we call a change of status petition, right? This does not require you leave the United States and go through consular processing. It's done here in the US, okay? The entire process from start to finish typically takes between 10 to 12 weeks, okay? Can it take longer? Oh boy, can it, right? Can it take less? Sure, I've seen it done in less time, but I think it's important to kind of like temper your expectations, right? So this is a general timeline. When I work with a new organization, with a client who wants to put one of their employees through the fellowship, this is the basic timeline. The first 2 or 3 weeks, we're going through the evaluation process. I talk with the company. We collect a lot of documentation. Jeff and his team review all of the transcripts, diplomas, immigration history, you name it. We do a holistic review of everything to make sure that this case is not only going to be like an H-1B qualified, but if we do file it, it's actually going to be approved by USCIS. I want to make it very clear, the Build Fellowship, we do not take on fellows. We do not go through this process and file petitions unless we're sure that these petitions are going to be approved. Okay. So we do the evaluation, everything looks good. We go through contracting, petition development. We file the petition. We file all of our petitions with premium processing. So that means an employer or USCIS has up to 15 business days to issue a response. If no RFE, we get the approval within 15 business days. Okay. Once we have our approval, we onboard you through the fellowship. Once the onboarding process is complete, you start with the fellowship. That's when the employer can file their concurrent petition, and then you move on from there to, working on your cap-exempt H-1B for your primary employer. Okay, so for right now, it's December 11th. If you or your employer are going to be putting you in the H-1B lottery in March, and you're thinking about the Build Fellowship as a potential backup solution, we need to be having a conversation before the lottery. Okay, I can't tell you how many times I get a call. That's basically April 1st until July 4th is calls from people who are like just now trying to find a backup plan, right? They did not plan ahead. So good for everyone here today. You're already a step ahead in the game, but you need to be looking into this before it's too late. Okay. So that said, 10 to 12 weeks, pretty typical. So the impact of the Build Fellowship and how everything works here is, you can see it really just by our company partners, our university partners, and the relationships and the impact we've had with the students and companies. We have worked with over 300 companies over the last 8 years to help them retain employment or recruit employment. It's not only about keeping an employee, it's also sometimes about recruiting an employee, right? So over 300 companies we've worked with over the last 8 years. Right now, currently, we have over 200 active fellows in the fellowship. Okay. We have an approval rating for our petitions that we file with USCIS of greater than 99%. So good job for you, Jeff, and your team. Great track record there. And that really comes back to not only the amazing work that Jeff's team does, but it's also the fact that we don't take cases that we're not going to be sure it's a layup,
Right.
And we tell, I've had to have that conversation. It's a difficult one, but to let someone know or let a company know, like, I'm sorry, this isn't going to work. Right. So I'd rather have that conversation now than 2 months into the process and save everyone time and money. And then you look at our university partners and the number of university students that have participated in our fellowship programs and learned from one of our fellows. Over 5,000 students in the last 8 years have benefited from participating in the Build Fellowship and studying from an expert in their field, right? And that is huge. I visit college campuses, some of the universities that we're partnered with, and these students, this plaque right here is actually the Employer of the Year plaque for one of our university partners for Open Avenues Foundation, because the students had such an impact on those students and finding employment after they graduated, right? And so it's not just about the individual foreign national staying in the U.S., keeping their job. It's an educational program. Our focus is on training the workforce of the future here in the United States and having the best possible talent lead that, right? And then you can see some of the companies that we're partnered with there as well. So a lot of you probably are asking right now, especially if you found this on your own. Well, okay, this all sounds great. If I don't win the lottery, build fellowship, sounds like a no-brainer to me. How do I convince my employer to do this, right? How do I pitch this to them, so to speak? So I get this question almost every day, and I think it's really important to involve your employer as much as humanly possible in this process, right? Don't spring this on them after the lottery. Have the conversation now, right? And what I usually recommend is bring it up now as, hey, get the lottery coming up. If it's your last attempt, maybe you're at the end of your OPT or STEM OPT. I've started looking into alternatives in case the lottery, if we don't win, right? Here's one of the options that I looked into. This is the backup plan, right? The goal for everyone should be to win the lottery. And in a perfect world, we wouldn't even need this lottery system. You're a highly skilled foreign national. You got this great skill set. A company here wants to employ you. Awesome. But this is the world we live in. So it's a backup plan, right? Bring it up now. Don't wait. Okay. Now, when it comes to the company deciding on whether or not it's worth the endeavor of the fellowship, what it most time comes down to is cost of replacement versus cost of retention. If you just type that phrase into Google right now, you're going to find about 6,000 HR articles that'll show a company that spends money to retain an employee, even through a program like the Build Fellowship, is always going to spend less retaining them than what they would need to spend to replace them. Okay. So for those of you who are STEM OPT, you've been at your employer for 2.5 years, coming into the lottery, whatever it may be, it's not only about your salary, right? Because the next person they hire, they're going to have to step up. They're going to pay recruiters. They're going to pay HR. It's also about institutional knowledge loss, right? If you are an essential part of this organization, if you have spent past couple of years working for this company, that's incredibly valuable. Getting someone to be at your level takes a lot of time, and for every company, time equals money. Okay, so cost of retention is always lower than cost of replacement. Now, the other thing, and this is something that I have seen firsthand, is participating in a program like the Build Fellowship on both sides, both for the employee and the employer, really does instill a sense of commitment to one another, right? So from the employer standpoint, they're saying to this person, hey, we want you to work for us, right? You could have worked a lot of places, especially like smaller firms that are competing, like in let's say like in the tech industry. They got to stand out from the crowd. They got to be able to go and get the talent they need to grow their organization. Having something like this as an option if you don't win the lottery shows them, hey, we're willing to do what it takes to retain you, right? From the employee standpoint, if an employer does something like this, it says, hey, they're willing to do this for me. And it's pretty nuts if you think about it, most employees change employers between 3 and 4 years. Like, it's a pretty common process for this new demographic of employees, right? The younger generation, because each time you change an employer, you typically get a raise, right? This is a good way for companies to have a little bit more of retention, a longer retention rate for their employees as well, right? You have this instilled sense of like commitment, loyalty, right? And so the likelihood of them leaving after 2 years is a little bit lower, right? And then last but not least, how do you pitch your employer? You tell them about this and then you schedule an appointment with us, right? Our job, my job specifically, is to educate employers to really advocate for the foreign national as to why this is a great backup solution. Okay. So you don't have to do this entirely on your own. So some other considerations here: great flexibility, great timing. You don't have to do it right away. You can plan ahead. You're not bound to lottery timing, right? And for this last one, can build your case profile working as a fellow. And Jeff, maybe you can kind of like speak to this a little bit. It looks really good on your resume. And if for some of you who are like, my goal is maybe like an O1 visa or something along those lines, working with universities, leading these educational projects, like this is resume gold for a lot of you, right? And so, while it's not going to be like the difference of you winning like a Nobel Peace Prize and putting that on your resume, right? It's certainly going to reflect very positively later on, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think another big consideration of why an employer might want to do this is that it opens up a pipeline of
Excellent point.
does- dozens and dozens of university students who will be working with the foreign national as he or she is leading college students through this experiential learning opportunity. And every now and then, it turns out that one of these university students is a rock star. And
Couldn't agree
and
more.
the next thing you know, the company is making an offer to, or at least entering into a conversation about future employment. And this has happened several times over the past 3 years, where university students involved in learning from the fellows end up getting a job from the fellows, and it really does expand the potential
The talent
pipeline for
pipeline is there. I
employers.
mean, because you think about it, you graduate from college, the first place you're going to go to apply for a job is probably where you did your internship, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so the schools that we work with are amazing universities, right? So employers can say, "Oh, I get to keep this person who's very valuable, and I now have a talent feeder of people who have a similar skill set who have been
yeah,
exposed to what it's like to work for this company."
yeah.
Great point, Jeff. Okay, so we're going to be wrapping up here. One of the questions was brought up. I'll start with this first one here, Jeff, and talk a little bit about it, and then we can talk about the I-529 change and the wage-based lottery. So you alluded to this earlier in the day, and I want to make it known that it's December 11th, 2:48 Eastern time, right? This is how it is right now, right? So if you're at home and you're watching this on YouTube and it's January 2nd, I apologize if this information is no longer accurate as of right now. But we have this presidential proclamation, $100,000 fee, right? How is it being enforced? Who's got to pay it? This question comes up very often. As of right now, if you are filing for a change of status, right? You're in the U.S. right now. You're on a valid status, F1, F1 OPT, J1, et cetera, and we can file what's called a change of status. You will not be subject to this $100,000 fee. Okay.
Correct.
Really, the only ones who are subject to this $100,000 fee are those who are outside of the United States and are filing for a new H-1B petition, right? And it's not even if you're changing employers or filing an extension or amendment. It's only for a new H-1B petition and you are outside of the United States. Okay.
Correct.
So for most of you here today, this wouldn't be the case. If you're going to school here in the US and you're on a valid F1, F1 OPT, wouldn't apply to you. Now, right now, there are some major court cases going on. One of the ones that we have been paying the closest attention to is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has filed a lawsuit trying to get this proclamation thrown out, right? It's December 11th. From my understanding, in the next couple of days or week here, there should be a summary judgment coming through with this case, right? That may or may not impact whether or not that $100,000 fee is enforceable or legal for these consular notify petitions that are filed. Okay. So if you are not in the United States right now and you are going to enter the H-1B lottery or you are thinking about using the Build Fellowship to come in, keep an ear to the track to pay attention to a couple of these court cases. Obviously, on our LinkedIn feed and things like that, we'll be putting out information as we get it. But as it stands right now, that's what we know. Okay. A question we got that I don't think we know the answer to yet, but Jeff, maybe you can speak to this. There's been a lot of talk about for this upcoming lottery changing to a wage-based lottery system. So as it is right now, Jeff mentioned earlier, it's totally random. You put your name in the hat, 600,000 other people put their name in the hat, you get your name drawn out, right? So what is this proposed potential change, and is it actually going to take effect?
Yeah. So the Trump administration, over the past several months, first were working on this, and then they announced it that the lottery in March of 2026 will give preferential treatment to registrations in the lottery where the wage is at the highest level.
So maybe
Um,
explain like there's level 1 through 4 for the prevailing wage. If you can do a quick 2 or 1 minute summary on that.
Yeah. The H-1B requires that the employer pay the fair prevailing wage. The starting place to find out what is the fair prevailing wage for this job at this location is using the U.S. Department of Labor's OES wage survey. And that has four levels. Level one, entry level, level two, then level three, and level four for the jobs that require the most experience. They have to be paid the most. And the Trump administration says if an employer is offering a level four wage, they're going to have the most chances of winning the lottery than a level three wage. Not as many chances as a level four wage, but more than the level two, and the level two more than the level one. So they're not saying you cannot enter with a level one wage. They're just saying you don't have as good a chance of winning. Um, Now, is that legal or not? I think it's absolutely illegal, and I do think a federal court's going to throw it out before March when the lottery is conducted. And the reason is the H-1B law that was passed by Congress couldn't be more clear that this has to be a random lottery where every entry has an equal chance of winning. And it even goes on to say there may not be any preferential treatment given to any particular class of entrants. So that's Trump is trying to give preferential treatment to a specific class of entrants, and I think courts will shut this down. We don't know. Uh, Actually, I will say the Trump administration has not yet issued a final rule by publishing the final rule in the Federal Register, which is a publication from the US government where all proposed laws, both proposed and then final, must be published. Well, I don't know when the heck they think they're going to publish a final registration, but it's getting very close to the lottery. I think they haven't published it because they themselves
No, that it.
think they're having second thoughts about whether they legally
Sure.
can do this. So I'm betting that there will not be a wage-based lottery, but we don't know.
Okay. Well, and for those of you who are interested in finding out more, we have put some information out there, and you can find like if you are a level one, a level two, the probability of you winning obviously changes, right? These sorts of things. So that's another one of those situations where it's being floated. I think a lot of times these things get floated because they want to maybe discourage employers from entering the lottery, right?
Yeah.
Or just kind of like sow the seeds of chaos, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see how this works. The last thing I want to cover here and with you, Jeff, is can you speak a little bit about this update to the I-529? So if you are coming out of undergrad or graduate school, you're on your F1, right? There's some changes here. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Used
So we
to
spoke about
change.
this. Yeah, we spoke about this earlier this week about the timing of things.
Yeah. Well, the I-529 is used to change certain status into something else, not H-1B.
Right.
H-1B, if an employer if you win the lottery and the employer files the
Yeah.
H-1B to
I think
change
I
your
meant
status,
going from F1 to OPT.
um,
Or am I
I think
confused
what
on this?
I think you're confusing.
Okay, great.
I think the issue is this. The Trump administration has a new proposed rule to get rid of the vague ending date of F1 status.
That's right.
All of you in F1 status know that your official ending date is not a specific date, but rather it says D/S, which stands for duration of status. And it means as long as you're maintaining all the rules of F1 and you're going to school when you're supposed to, and if you're in OPT, you're working for who you're supposed to be working for, you continue to maintain your status. The proposal will announce that all F1s and J1s will suddenly have a specific ending date, which, to make it simple, will probably be graduation. and then your status expires. So now, if you want OPT, you actually have to file an application, the I-529, to extend F1 status so you can have OPT. Well, why is that a big deal? It's a big deal because now you're actually filing an application with the US government asking them to review everything and to extend your status. Whereas before, you didn't need to extend your status because your status wasn't expiring because you had D/S. And all you needed to do was to talk to your International Scholars Office and get a new Form I-20, and that would extend your status. So it is a big deal that the Trump administration is trying to change the rules to add a specific ending date. Again, why would they do this? Pretty much to create chaos and confusion and more difficulty and collect another filing fee.
I'm sensing a theme here.
They're not doing it because it protects the United States or helps them keep track of foreign students. They keep excellent track of foreign students. After 9/11, our country came out with a very sophisticated system called SEVIS, which is strictly keeps track of every foreign student, what they're doing, who they're doing it with, where they are, and there's no way that this change from the Trump administration, which they said is to protect the United States, there's no way it's protecting the United States. It's meant to just create more chaos.
Amazing.
And we don't know. We don't know where that's going.
Okay.
But a final rule is expected by January, whether there will be this new imposition of a specific ending date in F1 status.
Okay. Thanks. So the moral of the story here is for these three items that you see on the screen, there's what we know now, and then there's what is going to be the case once the rulings or once these things are, come into effect or get thrown out of court. So, speak as a father of two daughters. This SEVIS thing, I need to look into that for myself, just to have in my own family to make sure I know who they're with and what they're doing.
We all parents,
yeah,
all parents need the SEVIS system.
Bad joke. Okay, so we are at the hour. We don't have time here at the end to generally dive into many Q&As, but if you do have questions that didn't get answered today, the best thing for you to do is you can email the Build Fellowship at info@buildfellowship. If you or maybe your employee, or you want to maybe nominate yourself or nominate an employee for the fellowship as a potential backup solution, or not a backup solution to participate sooner than the lottery, you can do so on our website, buildfellowship.com. So Jeff, thank you so much for spending an hour with me this afternoon.
Sure.
I really appreciate it. And for all of you at home, thanks for taking time out of your busy day. I'm sure all of you have things to do. And if you are looking for an immigration solution, if you have questions, feel free to reach out. And I hope all of you have a great rest of your day.